Expand the conversation. SABC News Reporter Khayelihle Khumalo joins us at the moment. Khayelihle, very good evening to you. Welcome. You've just had your interactions earlier today with Minister Ronald Lamola. We know that there are serious concerns among travellers to Mozambique that protest action could erupt come Monday. And of course, Mozambique stands at a critical juncture in its political future. The number of Mozambican nationals crossing Lebombo port of entry in Mozambique, what is the situation on the ground as you assess it?
Well, certainly, Mpo, it's a very important moment for South Africa and Mozambique in light of the meeting that we saw involving the ministers from South Africa alongside their counterparts from Mozambique. I think there was a great deal of understanding the gravity of the situation. For example, when you talk about Maputo corridor, it's significant for South Africa, but also Mozambique and many other neighboring countries within the SADC region, because this is quite a very important corridor. It's serving South Africa's economic hub of Gauteng and other neighboring provinces like here in Mpumalanga and also Limpopo, looking at the mining sector, looking at the logistics, but also looking at the petroleum sector and many other sectors as well, including logistics. I think there was a great deal of understanding that the disruptions that you have seen, the intermittent disruptions that you have seen, should be avoided at all costs to really just make sure that they stabilize the situation. But in as far as the situation at the border is concerned, obviously there's quite a massive number of the people who are waiting to cross. And the Border Management Authority, they say they're doing their best to make sure that there's ease in terms of movement. But I think a point of concern, you have a snake of trucks that have been stationed there for some time, but also there's a strong visibility when it comes to the law enforcement agencies. For example, in the meeting that was held here in Malelane, we saw the Minister of Defense, Angie Motshekga, and some representatives as well from the Department of Police here in South Africa, alongside their counterpart from Mozambique. I mean, we spoke to the ministers from Mozambique as well, who were very concerned about the situation. For example, talking about the impact at the ports of Maputo, where we've seen several areas in terms of disruptions, but also a lot of them are really just looking forward to that all-important announcement imposed by the Constitutional Council of Mozambique. Certainly, the ball is in the court of the council in terms of looking at the validity of the results, especially because we've seen from the opposition leader, Mr. Venancio Mondlane, threatening more protest. In fact, to quote him in verbatim, where he said the Constitutional Council will put Mozambique on a peace path, or they will just create chaos. Obviously, he still claims that there is electoral fraud, but obviously the Mozambican authorities, they are still saying it's quite important to give the council time to make a determination. So we're expecting that big announcement on the 23rd of December.
But in the meantime, the Border Management Authority, the police, the SANDF, they're all working together to curb criminal activities at the border. And you make mention of the trucks stationed there for quite some time. Of course, that in itself poses some sort of a risk factor. What are some of the main concerns on the ground and what officials may have encountered?
Well, certainly there's quite a litany of concerns on the ground, especially when it comes to a number of concerns. I mean, the truck drivers who have been queuing there patiently in terms of issues of sanitation, but also just in terms of their security, because as much as you do have the police and other law enforcement agencies on the ground, you can really see the areas of weaknesses, because, I mean, it's a long line of trucks that are waiting there, but also in terms of really just affecting the business as well. In terms of the mining sector, certainly it is really just a massive cost factor in terms of really disrupting the affairs. But from the undertaking that we saw from the joint statement from the South African ministers alongside their Mozambican counterparts, I think they spoke a lot about the joint efforts in terms of making sure that they deal with these issues, because we know that it's a festive season, and we know that, for example, a number of South Africans and many other nationalities, I mean, they love Mozambique for its beauty, for its all sorts of things. And tourism is one of the key sectors whenever you look at the economy of Mozambique. I mean, they've been trying to diversify the economy for some time. Tourism is one of the key areas that they are always looking at. So if you continue to have these demonstrations and also this volatility that is really dominant, it's really going to create chaos. And obviously, I think for South African authorities, they do understand that it's quite important to have a stable Mozambique. I mean, this is an issue that South Africa has been seized with. For example, Minister Lamola says President Ramaphosa constantly is in touch with his Mozambican counterpart, President Felipe Jacinto Nyusi, so that they try and find a solution, especially a solution that will come from all these key players within the SADC region, especially, once again, Paul, going back to the critical point around the Maputo corridor, you know, just in terms of promoting the regional integration, the value chain, but also most importantly in terms of when you talk about African continental free trade area, this is one of the very critical areas really that you really need to be effective, to be unhindered by all sorts of impediments.
As you spoke to Minister Ronald Lamola, Khayelihle, he spoke about a constructive engagement between two countries exchanging notes. And I mean, when you asked him about the interactions with President Cyril Ramaphosa and his counterpart in Mozambique, do you get a sense from the South African team that come Monday, perhaps the tensions may have dissipated and there will be some sense of normality? Because, you know, as we assess the impact of these protests and the threats and the tensions, there's also been warnings from insurance companies who are saying that if you happen to go and visit a risky country in terms of volatility, you will not be covered as a holiday maker going and reaching for your destination. But of course, we know that a large number of those leaving are Mozambican nationals hoping to enjoy some you know, holiday time in their country.
Well, absolutely, Paul. I mean, there's quite a lot of concerns on the ground, most definitely for the travelers as well. But obviously, a lot of people also, they're just on this, on the tenterhooks, essentially, especially because we know that in as far as Mr. Mundlane is concerned, one of the presidential candidates on the 9th October elections. So he has called for a day of mourning. I think it's going to start from tomorrow, but we know that as we head to Monday, there's quite anxiety. We know that, for example, we've seen all sorts of speculation that other embassies, for example, they are preparing for the evacuations, but obviously everyone is still just keenly waiting for these developments. But what has been also very interesting, I think South Africa understands that they want a very stable neighbor. I mean, obviously, we've had so many cases where we've seen instabilities, and South Africa has always been a very dependable ally of Mozambique. You go back to the instability in the northern parts of Mozambique in terms of repelling the terror attacks. South Africa has been one of the troops contributing countries in terms of making sure that they deal with insurgency. So now you have this particular political stalemate. South Africa, once again, saying they are willing to really just assist Mozambique in terms of really making sure that they are able to overcome this challenge. But in as far as the nitty-gritty, in terms of the security details, what will happen from now onwards, Minister Lamola was fairly tight-lipped. Obviously, these are very security matters, saying these are very sensitive plans.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Khayelihle Khumalo, of course, on the ground, giving us a sense of the latest in a developing story as we continue to take a look at some of the movement around the Mozambican nationals, of course, the tensions there and the ripple effect.